What if I told you that one of the most influential coaches in the history of football believes that what we witnessed with Lionel Messi will never be repeated? It's not said by a fan, not said by just another former player. It's said by Arsène Wenger, a man who spent decades observing, developing, and facing entire generations of superstars. And when someone like him stops and states that Messi is the culmination of a masterpiece, the question almost asks itself: are we looking at the only footballer capable of turning the impossible into routine without ever losing the ability to amaze us? Wenger expressed it with the calm of someone who has seen everything and still finds room for surprise. For him, looking at an image of Messi lifting the trophy is not just watching a celebration, it is contemplating the perfect closing of a symphony. And it's no coincidence that he uses that language, because Messi was never just about goals or statistics. He was a conductor who, for 20 years, brought order to the chaos of football, transforming unbelievable plays into everyday actions. The extraordinary became routine, and yet it never lost its magic. But behind that work, there was a weight that few can bear. Not just the weight of a historic jersey, nor that of a giant club. There was an entire nation waiting, a story loaded with frustrations, lost finals, doubts repeated over and over again. Messi lived with that for years. We saw him walk with his head down, carry uncomfortable silences, listen to criticisms that often felt unfair. And still, he kept going. Not out of pride, but out of conviction, until that image, the most awaited one, finally arrived. Messi lifting the trophy. Not as an individual release, but as a collective relief. What makes Wenger's perspective even stronger is that it does not come from Argentine emotion, but from a universal place. For him, Messi is eternal. And eternal does not mean playing forever. It means remaining untouchable in memory, because what he did cannot be repeated. Football always promises new stars, new gems, new prospects, but that blend of talent, consistency, sensitivity, and resilience does not appear twice. And perhaps that's why, in a sport that constantly projects itself toward the future, there is a kind of silent consensus. This story was unique. That entire footballing life, Rosario, Barcelona, Europe, the falls with the national team, the criticism, the comebacks, the redemption, ends up condensed into a single scene. And Wenger sums it up with a word that carries more weight than any praise: justice. Justice for the game, justice for history, justice for someone who never stopped trying when others would have let go. But beyond the emotion, there is a reflection that lingers. Football is collective, yes, but from time to time someone appears who transcends it. Messi not only won matches, he changed the way the game is understood. He showed that talent can coexist with pressure, that humility is not incompatible with greatness, and that art still has a place in a sport that is increasingly physical and calculated. And maybe that is the strongest part of all. When Messi retires, it won't just be a player who leaves, it will be a way of watching football. That disorienting pause, that decision no one else sees, that constant feeling that at any second something unrepeatable can happen. What will remain are the memories and the stories we will tell to explain to others what we were lucky enough to live through. That's why what Wenger said is not just another compliment, it's a historical recognition. Because when someone who dedicated his life to analyzing the game says that Messi is eternal, he is not talking about numbers or records. He is talking about legacy, about something that does not wear out with time, but grows. And that is where football finds its true greatness, in figures who don't just win, but leave an impossible-to-erase mark. There is something that often goes out of focus when people talk about Messi, and that is the effect he had on those who were supposed to explain everything, the coaches. Because if facing him was already disconcerting for players, for many managers, it was a direct intellectual challenge. How do you prepare a plan for someone who breaks every scheme the moment he touches the ball? How do you correct a footballer who seems to see plays that don't even exist yet? For years, Messi forced coaches to rethink their certainties. Systems that worked stopped working when he was on the field. Perfectly rehearsed presses fell apart with a single first touch. And there, something uncomfortable emerged. It wasn't always about adjusting tactics. It was about accepting that there was a player operating on a different frequency. Not faster, not stronger, but more lucid. Many coaches, even the most prestigious ones, ended up acknowledging that Messi did not train like the rest. Not because he didn't work, but because his relationship with the game was different. While others executed orders, he interpreted the match. While some looked for spaces, he created them. And that, for a coach, is as fascinating as it is unsettling, because it forces you to let go of control and trust. That influence went beyond matches. It filtered into schools, academies, and the way football is taught. Suddenly, running and colliding was no longer enough. The pause, the right decision, the reading of the game began to be valued. Messi, without intending to, pushed football to think again, to remember that this sport is not just about intensity, but about intelligence. And perhaps that's why his impact isn't measured only in titles, but in entire generations who grew up watching a different way of playing. Kids who learned that slowing down is also an option, that the simple pass can be the hardest play of all, that talent doesn't need noise to impose itself. While some remember him for his goals, and others for his trophies, there is a quieter footprint that keeps growing, the one that changed the way football is understood, taught, and felt. And when that kind of influence appears, we are no longer talking about an exceptional player. We are talking about someone who left a mark on the game itself. And maybe that's the hardest thing to accept, that not everyday football gives us a figure who changes it from the inside. That someone capable of forcing players, coaches, and fans to look at the game differently does not always come along. Messi was that. Not just the one who won, but the one who taught without giving lessons, who turned noise into pause and speed into intelligence. Over time, goals blend together in memory, titles line up in display cases, and statistics get lost in endless comparisons. But there are sensations that don't fade. That expectation before he touches the ball, that second of silence when he slows the game down, that certainty that something different is about to happen. That is what remains. That is what builds a legend. And when we think about this era years from now, we may not remember every result, but we will remember how it made us feel. We will remember that there was a player who didn't need to shout to impose himself, who didn't seek protagonism outside the box, and yet was the center of everything. Because true impact isn't always measured in noise, but in the mark that remains. So now I ask you, do you think we will ever see another footballer capable of changing the game in this way? Or are we witnessing something that will never be repeated? Read the comments, leave your opinion, and join the conversation. Because these stories are not built only on the pitch, but also by those who live them and remember them. And if you enjoy this kind of storytelling, where football is thought about, felt, and discussed with respect and depth, subscribe to the channel, because as long as the game keeps rolling, there will always be stories worth telling.